We are living in unprecedented times. No matter what industry you come from, we must all review, rethink, and reinvent ourselves. Are you an entrepreneur that is trying to adapt your business to the new norm? Well, you are listening to the 2020 Entrepreneur, a podcast that will motivate you and have you think outside of the box. My name is Hugo Almeida, and with over 30 years of being an entrepreneur, I am here to share and inspire you with my experiences and help invent a new you. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to T20E World. Hugo here, and today we are talking about social media careers in 2021. That is pretty freaking awesome. And with us, we have Nadir Pearson, who is the digital strategist for Pangea.app. Nadir, welcome. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, Hugo, thank you so much. It's Capricorn season, and it was my birthday yesterday, so I'm feeling good.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Nadir. I understand you graduated from Brown University, huh?
Yes. So I'm a New Jersey native.
Awesome.
Went to public school here up until middle school, and then eventually took my talents prep school in Connecticut. So that was a really cool experience. Ultimately went to Brown, played some football there, and then we can talk a little bit more about the rest of the journey. But it's definitely been an exciting one.
Oh, that's great, man. Division I athlete into Brown University. Congratulations, man. And by the way, happy birthday.
Yes, 24 years old. Just a year and a half or so out of college. So it's again, just being happy that we are where we are. Pandemic 2020 has been nuts. So again,
no doubt.
Grateful.
Oh yeah, no doubt on that one, man. It's been a changing experience for everyone. We've all learned, right, to pivot, adapt, improvise, and move forward, man.
Totally.
So listen, I want to talk to you about different things, and we're going to dive into the social media careers because it's such a hot topic of interest for so many people that not only are in college at the moment, but are coming out that have graduated. And social media right now really is driving the corporations in their marketing departments. So things have changed, right? The traditional way of marketing or in the structure within corps, it's amazing how it's shifted. It's all social media today. So before we dive in, I wanted to also kind of ask you a little bit about Pangea, your role as digital strategist. Give us a little background on that.
Yeah, so for folks who are unfamiliar, Pangea.app is a college talent platform, right? So students can go on there, look for positions, especially freelance and remote jobs. And then, growing startups and other types of businesses can go ahead and place opportunities for work, as they look to scale their businesses and hire young, qualified talent. So.
It's awesome. Yeah, no, listen, we are part of that Pangea.app family, and we are very excited and happy. It's been working successfully, and you guys are just spreading across the country in all major universities like a virus. Congratulations, man. It's freaking awesome.
Hopefully, hopefully in a good way, like a virus, right?
Totally. But, I mean it like I'm not talking COVID here. No, this is awesome.
Right.
That you guys are spreading, all these opportunities to engage other students and becoming a part of that Pangea.app family. And I know from our discussion that you're actually heading up something new called the Pangea Academy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I came onto the Pangea team roughly in, September, just as the school year started, wanted to do something different. I was coming out of my last job working as a digital strategist for another company in the cannabis space, so that does marketing. And so, I had known Adam, our founder, since, my time in school. We were both at Brown together. Awesome. And I watched him, take Pangea from Pangea Mart, which, what it was previously. And that was just any type of skills, any type of activity that you need, whether it was like cleaning your bathroom or, walking dogs, it was a place that you could go,
Sure.
But again, continue to like niche down, be very specific on the goal of like trying to help people get work opportunities. And so it's been amazing to, see that grow naturally through Adam's like hard work. And again, like I decided to come on the team because I saw there was a great opportunity to really focus on the social media aspect of things. Digital strategy is kind of the big play, right, of the overarching umbrella of everything from SEO to email and, all those things underneath. And so, but social media, to your point, has been the big community contact point, right? You grow a lot of your community on social. So I've been doing a lot of that through my work, starting a student organization called SMART on campuses.
Yeah.
And so, that's basically, it has a lot of similarities to Pangea where, we help students get in contact with people who are looking to hire, but it's more so, without so much sophisticated technology that Pangea has. and additionally, in a different industry. But through that, I've had experience that led me to here we are today, right? Helping the Pangea team. Pangea Academy is our 1 month boot camp. So we have 3 meetings. We just had the last one, which was strategy and planning, and the next two we'll have will be around management and distribution of content. Actually posting things online. And then the last one will be more of like the analytics and next steps. Like how do you go about actually getting a job, where places to start? Obviously, Pangea being a great hub to start. So
Yeah, man. Congratulations. Now, just so our listeners understand this, I actually sat in the first Academy class last week. Nadir
yep.
gave a phenomenal presentation. It was like probably the only presentation that was about 99 slides or so for a couple hours that I was like totally focused. I was engaged and it went without a hitch. So congratulations, by the way. That was a phenomenal presentation. And you had a big ass group on that call. So that was
Yeah.
awesome. And I'm looking forward to sitting in on the next one. So let's dive into careers, man. Social media careers here in 2021. So how do you start, man? How do you get these roles, Nadir?
Yeah, well, I think we kind of talked about this to your point earlier, in the sense that, social media is one of the only things that, folks that are super young, 18 to, we'll say, 24, right, have somewhat of an organic experience in, right? You maybe
Totally.
some other things that we might think about are like sales, if you're a good talker or
Yep.
speaker, right? Things like that. But really, social media is something that most of us, engage in some way, shape, or form. In that sense, it's pretty accessible, right? For us to come in and start to work with other businesses that are growing, who are still making that pivot
Yeah.
into having their businesses be more focused digitally. And young people are poised, just by naturally growing up in this generation in a futuristic time. We're in 2021, so I say futuristic all the time now. But yeah, just because of that, like I said, there's an abundance of companies looking to make that pivot and make that transition. And if young college students of age can start to come in and showcase that, hey, I know how to grow a community, I know how to engage people and post relevant content, that's like your first step. But to your point, even practically, just starting to go ahead and post, create content, and really get a feel for how these social platforms, engage with content and users,
Sure.
because they all have their little bit, their tweaks, whether it's an Instagram or a TikTok or a Twitter, on how you're able to grow using those.
Yeah, so that's an important point there, because understanding the value that you bring to the corporation, and that's something that
Yeah.
it's important because you got to kind of understand that, right? If you're going into corporate
Mhm.
America, whatever it may be, whatever role, small, medium, or large, you have a value that they currently need. So
Yep.
understanding what you can do and what you can bring and add is so important. So I guess diving in, right, to see what your strengths are in social media marketing before you go and you present yourself to a company. And I know we had talked about this. So how do you progress like in the social media space? There's so many, I just feel like there's so many apps out there to get your hands around. But how do you
Yep.
progress? How do you gain the experience before getting out there to the workforce?
Well, I would say it's kind of like a little bit of both. It's a little bit of, trial and error. A lot of social media is trial and error. I can go a little bit into like my story, right? And kind of talk about
Awesome.
how
Yeah,
I was
share.
able to do it, because I think that just it paints a very, vivid picture of how you're able to go from one. My first job ever was working as the coordinator for the Brown University Snapchat. And that was something where, my application process was me making a mock story. So send us an example of what you would do, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a first thing where, because content is so accessible on your phone, you don't have to ask permission to start, creating accounts. You can make an account that is something that you totally enjoy doing. If it's about cats and you want to make an account about cats that wear, certain cute outfits,
Yeah.
that's niche. People are enjoying, people care about cats. There's a big cat community,
No
right? So
doubt, man.
I just, but my point here is, like, you can create content around literally anything you want. And if you do it in a way that's, somewhat cohesive, you can start to build, some experience there. Right. And that's the one thing about social media. It's a free way to gain experience. And through my time at the Brown Snapchat, obviously it was a opportunity where a lot of my job was to go ahead and work with people at Brown, whether it was like student orgs or whether it was like a fitness center, and see what needs they had. And if we could do maybe a collaborative, media channel with them, or a collaborative content piece for that matter. Right. So being able to kind of understand those types of, macro level partnerships,
Sure.
plus what you can do at a content perspective of, if I'm somebody who's watching your story, But again, it just takes trial and error. You go really just go out and do it, mess up, and literally, you'll see if an account does well, go in and assess what's doing well, what's not, and you continue from there to see, what your community feeds on.
I guess every social media application. I know the hot ones right now. You got the Instagram, YouTube, the Facebooks of the world, but TikTok coming up quick. It's actually
Yep.
huge now. So understanding the analytic piece is important, right? So if you're
Yep.
playing around with these apps, like you say, just get out there, dabble in it, do it. I know that you could be walking down the street, and as you're walking down the street, create a new account on, like you said, it could be on
Yeah.
cats.
Exactly.
So there is
Yeah.
a niche out there. No, there is a niche. So let me ask you though, how do you actually try to get your foot inside that door, man? You find that sweet company that you dream of working for. Give us some insight. What should they be
Right.
thinking? What
So,
should they be
so one
doing?
example again, right? I sent an example of my content to Brown. Another time is when I went to the Boston Freedom Rally, right? And so this was just another festival in Boston, and I decided to go there and film people, asking them one question. I said, "Hey, what would you say to someone that says cannabis is bad?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I started to just go around and ask the vendors there and the business owners what their thoughts were.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a piece of content that I then created for myself
Mm-hmm.
to then go out, and I wanted to make it for my blog, right, or
Sure.
whatever it was, right? But I then used that when I went on LinkedIn, and I would send it to people as part of my introduction to them, right? So I would
Absolutely.
say, "Hey, what's going on? I'm so and so from Brown University. I'm a student here, sophomore. I'm looking to get into the space. I've also created this video here because this is something that I want to do long term, right?" And so it just goes to show people that you're putting in effort and passion, regardless if people are paying you, right? And I wasn't always concerned up front about getting paid. I was concerned about doing good work, and I know money would come later. And so sometimes with some of these jobs, it's best to say, "Hey, I'll do it for free, and
That's
let's see
right.
what happens. And if I grow your account, you don't got to do it for free forever. Free for now, not forever, right?" That's what I tell people.
Free for now,
Uh,
not forever. I
Not
love that
forever.
one. But you know what?
So
Freaking dead on point, man. You just hit the nail right on the head, dude. And that's phenomenal advice right there, Nadir. Because the reality is, you got to step outside your bubble. I mean, if you want to bring that value that we were just discussing a little bit ago, and you want to step outside of that crowd and be noticed, well, you know what? You have a passion, you follow it, you create some content, you get out there, you reach out to these companies. Hopefully, you know what? They'll give you the opportunity to get that foot inside the door. So thanks for sharing that information. Let me ask you, though, just out of curiosity, your opinion right now, the climate around social media. I mean, it's changed so much. I know we touched upon a bunch of different points, but your opinion on this.
yeah, I was gonna say social media is like one of those things that has a ton of potential and it has a ton of limitations, right?
Interesting.
So, right, social media is not the end all be all for your brand to the point
That's,
early on, and even in Pangea Academy strategy, right? I
yeah.
I went through a lot of the sales funnel and what that was,
Mm-hmm.
and I went through kind of some of your other potential content pieces, right? As example, being a blog or a video, right? Being your pillar content pieces, because what the thing about social media is you want it to be something that's comprehensive and cohesive with the rest of your brand and your other places that people will interact with your brand, right? So it's an extension typically of what the community can get a hold of. So as in the short sense, the best thing about social media is that you can go viral, right? And that you
Sure.
can drum up a lot of organic sales. But the limiting aspect is that if you don't have followers, you can't do that, right? You're in a certain position where you can't leverage social media how Wendy's might, right?
That's right.
Or Apple might leverage social media. If you're somebody who has 1,000 followers and you're growing, right? With Pangea as an example right now, a lot of the things that we need to do content wise are cross promotional, like events or either bringing students in because we want our community to be shared on other platforms,
Absolutely.
right? And so that's something that you have to think about. And that's not something that's going to always generate revenue right away.
Patience.
Right.
No, but it's a great point.
And sometimes businesses are expecting you to generate revenue right away because of what they have heard
It's
about
just
social media and its wonders, right?
unrealistic. Yeah.
And you have to kind of set that expectation as a social media manager. And you have to learn that also because sometimes people will come in and think a social media manager is everything to a company. And it's like, no, there's an editorial director. There should be maybe a content director. And obviously, sometimes we're talking about startups here where the social media manager is wearing 4 or 5 hats that they're generally some of these larger corporations have teams for.
Yeah.
So it can be overwhelming as a social media manager with all these expectations on you. And so that's kind of where I've learned that there's a way to kind of mediate that and set realistic expectations, especially for the stage of growth that your company's at, right? If I'm at 50,000 followers, maybe now I'm thinking heavily about converting sales, right? instead of just getting people to sign up for Pangea Academy, which is a little bit more top level. It's free for everybody. You can come, it's no sweat, but now you're familiar with us, right? So
Yep.
these are kind of the different considerations that people have to make. And like I said, I feel bad for social media managers sometimes because,
Oh,
they put
listen.
the business on
Uh,
their back.
I'm going to tell you something. Just from that first class in the academy, we've had probably about 3 video conferences this week.
Yep.
And one of the most helpful, and you just touched upon it, but one of the most helpful slides was just kind of sharing a couple org charts. And dude, the traditional pyramid of the org chart, I mean, just in marketing, you've always had the traditional, the way we're familiar with, you got the graphic designer and maybe a social media. The way you broke it down, it was like, I think it had like 7 different, 7 different titles. From
Right.
SEO that does all the analytical research. You have the content person, the writer. That helps so much. And as a matter of
In the
fact,
most basic sense, a social media manager is really supposed to just understand how the content that's already being created
yep,
goes on social,
yep,
right? They own social channels. How you decide to write the blog might not necessarily be their job. Their job may be, okay, the blog is written. Now I have this content. How do I make this content into a post that people now want to engage and bring us back to the site?
no doubt.
So that's typically like the ideal focus for a social media manager, where they're not always responsible. They should be, they're at the they're at the front of the community. So they know trends, right? They
Yeah,
know what's popular. They can see what's happening, and they should be relaying that back to the team
yep.
for the team to create new content and initiatives and so
No,
on.
man, listen, no doubt that's so important. As a matter of fact, I mean, today we're talking about social media careers. So
Yep.
understanding what you're good at, I mean, understanding the different opportunities that fall under the social media platforms, it's so important. I mean,
Oh,
like,
and this is a gateway, right? This is a gateway from, that's the idea of Pangea Academy, is like we want to give you a kind of a footprint foundation into digital strategy
yep,
and social media managing, because that's the role that we're seeing is being asked of the most of
yep,
people.
yep.
Companies are going to look for social media managers first when they want to scale. And so that again is the easiest way to get your foot in the door, right? I never wanted to always be a social media manager,
Sure.
but I knew it was the easiest way for me to get to some of these companies because that was the thing they lacked the most.
Absolutely
Or
right.
they had somebody who didn't want to do it, and I said, okay, well, I'll do it. And then eventually, I got moved to sales, or I got moved to account management, or I got moved to a different part of the creative team that was more fitting for me. But again, to your point, social media was the foot in the door.
Absolutely. Great point. And just out of curiosity, who, in your opinion, like, what is the ideal person that when you say, hey, you know what, they're good at social media marketing? Like, from your experience,
Yep.
I mean, you're 24 years old. You hold a digital strategist position right now with Pangea.app. So what do you
Yep.
look for? And you say, hey, you know what, this guy gets it.
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, what I've been finding in trying to build a team is that I really like to rely on people who have a good sense of design, like graphic design wise. I feel like that is the one thing where I can find a lot of people who can make captions. I can
That's right.
find a lot of people who can go source content online.
Mm-hmm.
I can't always find a lot of people who are technically skilled in saying like, here's a blog. I would love for you to turn this into some posts, or here's an event that we're having, make a graphic for it
Mm-hmm.
in a way that like, you would enjoy or is readable and actionable, because that's what it is. Sometimes it not only needs to be the information, but then what do I do with this information? What's the next step? What's the call to action,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And sometimes or how do I get other people to share this post when I'm creating the design?
Yeah.
One thing that I'm doing is always throwing logos on things, right? So if I throw a logo on it and incorporate the other person or organization, they're most likely going to share this thing. So kind of having somebody
Absolutely.
who's aware of that, it's part of the design initially, is part of the content production. I think we went so heavy on the strategy sections because that first and foremost aspect, knowing how it's going to relate to the rest of your process and the rest of the business, is the one key sign of like, okay, this person understands that we're not just doing likes and comments for likes and comments, but we're doing it to get either more people, in our contact list, on our email, in our network. So
Good stuff, Nadir. And listen, to all our listeners on T20E World, we're going to continue chatting with Nadir here on Social Media Careers in 2021 when we get back from thanking our sponsor. Are you a college student or recent graduate looking to land a job? Look no further. Pangea.app, a startup founded by 2 recent grads from Brown University, connecting students across the country with freelance projects that start part-time and can grow into full-time jobs. Get to work helping companies with their social media, websites, blogs, and products to make a real impact and make real money at the same time. Download for free at Pangea.app. That's Pangea.app. And start applying to remote roles at high-growth startups and e-commerce sites. Pangea.app, the first freelance marketplace built for students. All right, welcome back. And I mean, we're having an intense conversation here. It's phenomenal information, especially to all of the Generation Z, millennials that are in school coming out, trying to kick ass in their careers. Get a little quick start here. There's some good information here, Nadir, you've been sharing in the first part of this podcast. Let's dive into the following. A lot of people, even if you take just Instagram alone, have multiple accounts, right? Now, all of a sudden, they see they got something going here and they can handle maybe some companies. So now, what's your recommendation as to juggling multiple social media accounts at one time?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, right, if you're working with a company, you're probably already juggling multiple social media accounts just by working with one company, right? Because one company is probably going to have 3 or 4 accounts.
That's right.
They might have Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So that's one client, right? And can you bundle, if you think about, if you go on like Hootsuite or Later, they sell you the pricing, right? Of like, here's the X amount of accounts that you can have, but typically 4 accounts means individual Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, right? So it is in a way, right? So what I would say is to simplify that is where you want to start developing your systems and your, the way that you organize and plan content. For me, that's kind of been the part of that I've been lacking over time.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I've been continuously focusing on to scale myself and get me to the next level, right? Because for a long time, I was a little bit too ad hoc, a little bit too kind of like, I would brainstorm a lot of ideas, but not have necessarily a plan for execution, right? Or I would be curating things, but not necessarily planning 2 months in ahead for the holidays that are coming up, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And so being able to do that so that you're not under fire or under the gun all the time trying to create content and just get it out for timely things is where you can start to have some really good, impact, because then your content will be scheduled and then you can focus on engaging on the platforms more, which is where you're going to start to see like real growth start to happen when you start commenting on other people's pictures or commenting and engaging with your audience. And that takes time, but if you don't plan a set again for the scheduling, you might be a little bit behind the 8 ball there. The last part would be through Pangea Academy. That's the one thing that I made sure that I set up was, kind of those resources foundationally for people. So you would come in, our first meeting, you set up your strategy. That's the homework assignment, right? Coming up is what's my initial plan, right? What type of content do I produce? What, on a consistent basis, whether for Pangea, our pillars are Pangea.app as a whole, freelancing, adulting, entrepreneurship, right? Those are kind of the main things that we talk about.
Yeah.
So I know that every time we create content, it should relate to potentially one of those pillars. So for us to continue to, that makes our lives a little bit easier. And now that I have, a Trello, which is a project management system, I have, Google Drive and a few Excel sheets in there for us to kind of share and add and update, and other stakeholders on our team to add their ideas.
Yeah.
So all of that right there is what you need so that, you can have some visibility, is a lot of communication, and you yourself, are able to see the roadmap. Because it can get very bogged down if I have to share on Twitter and I have to make a story and I got to do this, right? So
it gets crazy.
So to prevent that, you need to develop those systems.
It's
100%.
funny because I was just going to talk about that. It's one thing I pulled out of Pangea Academy the other night when you were presenting was the fact that, and like I said, I met like 3 different times with my team here is because we all wear different hats, you know, and although, we might think we know what we're doing, the reality is there's so much more to learn. Right. And we're a little more aggressive in the sense that, I've been around in the industries for more than the majority of the people that are on my team. So I'm a little more aggressive in the fact that I want growth quicker. But the reality is you got to be patient and you got to do things right. Now, one of the things I pulled out of the Academy, Pangea Academy, were the fact that there's all these different workflow tools, right? And some of them in many cases are free. Like you talk about Trello. Trello is a great little project management app that keeps you guys all organized, and we've implemented it this week, as a matter of fact. So,
oh wow,
man, because listen, like I said, we wear many hats, and then the thing is, things actually slip. Like you just said, who's going to write the content? What are we doing for stories next week? I mean, this has got to be. It becomes overwhelming, you know, and trying to run a corporation plus, the growth on the digital media side is huge, man. So good stuff. Let me ask you recommendations and advice, for example, from you, just the best ways, man, to get your feet wet when there's new platforms, new apps. Like how do you stay
Oh,
present,
well,
like
yeah,
up to
this
date?
is good advice. And I like this conversation because I know, a lot of people, we get kind of shy with social media sometimes, right? Of being like in front of the camera. And I get that that can be nerve-wracking, right? Kind of putting yourself out there and all that way. But the internet's a really big place. And
That's
if,
right.
it depends kind of on, like your level of, I would even say risk, but just like how, how far you want to go, right?
Hmm.
In the sense of saying, okay, for me, when TikTok came out, I was resistant. I'm somebody who's like now getting older.
Hmm.
Yeah, relative to my generation or just the young, young folks who are now becoming the trendsetters. And so with that, I had to, take a step back and get that first taste of like, you're the old guy on the block. Here's this new app. Now you got to get used to this. This is not Instagram where like you grew up with it and you know about it and all that stuff, right? Like there's a whole community on TikTok that you're unfamiliar with. And so for me, I don't always necessarily feel like I need to know every aspect of the app,
Sure.
or every single facet to grow it. But I definitely need to know the rudimentary things that people are, like that work, right? And so, or just how the app maneuvers, what things can you use? For example, YouTube and Instagram are linked on TikTok now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been growing their YouTube and their Instagram using TikTok creation, right? Because
Hmm.
it funnels to you. And so me knowing that was like, okay, well now I can implement this as a tool. And if you're working with a company like Pangea.app, where we're gonna, over the next month, you'll see that we're gonna start to really ramp up, our TikTok production,
Yeah.
and just kind of our presence there
Hmm.
because we know that that's where our community is currently.
That's right.
And so there's no reason for us to not be on there. And so again, bringing it back to the shy folks, right? If you are shy, create content, but just do it so that you're familiar again with using the green screen technology on TikTok and using the different effects that they have on there. And knowing that if you use that effect, you might get put into a different hashtag or a different category on the app that people will see you. So if you want to be seen and you want and you want to practice that, go and just create content. I made content about like the most random things on my TikTok, and it was more or less like a fake TikTok,
Yeah.
just me just wanting to test it out.
Yep.
And I wasn't, I'm like, who's gonna see this? If I don't promote this, who's really gonna see this? Chances are nobody's gonna see this. But even with those little tests that I did maybe 5 TikToks by myself in my house, and I saw that some of them with hashtags really did well, and
Oh
then some
yeah.
of them didn't. And
Listen.
it was just relative to that growth. It was maybe 100 likes here and 0 likes here, right?
Yep.
But I was like, why did that happen? I have no followers, right? So just being able to go kind of in your corner of the internet and
Yep.
have fun and kind of not be scared of people seeing you or like making judgments, I think is the best way for you to kind of like organically learn some of these
Ah, that's
apps.
great advice, man. I'll share a story with you. During the pandemic, say it was March, April last year,
Mhm.
when it peaked in our area, New York, New Jersey,
Yep.
the worst thing that could have happened in my household is I found TikTok. And let me tell you, and I
Right.
did the same thing you just said, man. I put myself out there. I was like bored to death. I got to do something. My kids wanted to kill me. They're like, oh man, my pop's on TikTok. And I was like, hell
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
am. But
Get them to
anyway,
do a dance
but
with
you're
you.
right. Listen, absolutely right. It's in the beginning, you're not comfortable. But then you realize you're like, what the hell, man? You go with it, You put yourself out there a little bit. Step outside the bubble and your comfort
Mhm.
zone. I wanted to ask you also, to our listeners, what are some of the top social media platforms that one should really understand and spend
Mhm.
time knowing it?
Yeah, I would say depending on what you do, right? The ones that I have found to be of most interest to me recently
Yeah,
have definitely been, I think LinkedIn is like super
I
underrated.
tell you, it's changed too. It's
Yeah, it's super underrated. Even now that they're becoming very content heavy on there. They're
stories
introducing stories.
now. You could
People are
add
making
stories.
yeah, people are making things that are funny but work related. You know what I
I
mean?
get it.
And that's catching wind as well. But I also see it as a place even for like for example, for Adam from Pangea, our founder, right?
Yep.
He's somebody who has a pretty solid LinkedIn following.
Yeah.
So that is something that we kind of think about as its own platform or like another amplification tool for us for our company and kind of growing his personal brand
Yep.
as part of the brand of the company and how that kind of interchanges and intersects with itself. So for us, like I think that's a great way to kind of one grow your team internally as you're going to eventually like look to hire and but also it's a B2B place, right? We deal a lot with businesses,
Sure.
and so thinking about it as a way that we can educate our community, because in almost any business, regardless of the industry, you want to show that you have, knowledge in that domain.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and I agree because we've been analyzing the same situation here, even with T20E World.
Yep.
One, how do we grow it? But secondly, how do we tie that into my personal brand? Right.
Yep.
The founder of T20E World. I've thrown myself out there, and now it's tying into my LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I got a Twitter account. So now we're trying to kind of see how do we do the blend, right? And I've got a large corporate following on the
Yep.
LinkedIn. But I agree with you. We see huge potential in making LinkedIn work differently,
Right, right. And it's a
So
great, to what you're talking about, it's a great top of the funnel tool for people to just, if you want to create blogs about things that you're learning about running podcasts, right? 5 things that I've learned from running podcasts. That's the type of thing that does well on LinkedIn, right? Where
sure.
people are constantly looking for types of information and resources. And if you become somebody that now I'm looking to, because, I know Hugo's running a podcast, he keeps dropping cool tips and he maybe drop more resources for me to learn about my own podcast. Now I come to you for a resource. And if I ever think about podcasts, you're top of mind, right?
Yeah.
So I think, that's one quick good example. But Facebook, right? Facebook and Instagram are now becoming very similar
Yep.
in the
Very.
way of like how content creators are working on them. So it is a sense of like, as a social media person, you also want to be strong at content marketing, because with paid ads, it's not necessarily the same mechanisms as social media, because now you're paying to be in front of an audience, you're targeting the audience, and you're putting a spend behind it
Mm-hmm.
in a very particular way. And so with that, you just got to know what content and am I going to make for this paid ad that's going to be seen by this audience in this way, whether it's in their feed on Facebook or in a story, wherever you decide to make that placement.
Yeah.
That's going to be something that's important, because depending on that messaging or depending on that content will, make or break your conversion, right? Make or break your sales. So kind of understanding Facebook and Instagram as a pay to play scenario now, I think is important. But there's still some ways to grow, but I think a lot of it relies on cross promotion and amplification and
Agreed.
potentially even influencers. So
Absolutely, I agree. Influencers, that's another really important topic. I mean, that's a topic in itself that you could discuss for a solid hour, because we've learned a lot. I mean, you spoke about it, understanding what an influencer is, a micro influencer, and how to kind of integrate them with your business plan. Very important. Hey, listen, Nadir, I wanted to ask you, so realistic goals, right? If there's one thing I've learned in this new world of social media marketing, right? It's having a little bit of patience, right? Doing things right, following the rules, kind of putting yourself out there, but really being patient. It'll happen if you do it right. So setting realistic goals when trying to grow social media page, what would your advice be?
yeah, setting realistic goals, I would say, think about things that you can control, things that, you really think that, as part of your leverage. I know it's with Pangea, the goal that we set was to grow our followers from 500 to 1,000, right? In like 6 months. That was like one concrete goal that we
Sure.
set. We did hit that marker,
Yeah.
It was something that I felt confident that we could hit. And I thought we could go over it, if we worked harder, or even if we just came just shy, it would still be a good growth rate. So it's kind of that balance. I know a lot of times when we talk about setting goals, they always say to kind of do like 70% is okay. If you hit 70, 80%, that's okay. So set a goal that's like, if you hit 100%, it's like phenomenal. And if you hit 70, 80, it's okay, but you're striving to hit that 100.
Always.
And then in terms of like even making things that are relevant to what you do, for example, if you're a social media manager and the company comes to you and they say, hey, we need to make t-shirt sales, right? It's your job to get us $100 in sales. You can actually say, hey, let's draw that back and let's set a realistic expectation, right? Maybe my job or the metric that you're holding me to is not your sale, but it's my job in the funnel, right? Which means that if I can get the users from our social media to our website, that's mostly my job, right? That's really what my job is as a social media manager, is to get them from social media to your platform, or to get them to sign up for your email list. So that's another goal that we've set in terms of driving leads, is more thinking about the email list, right? Or then getting it into another, and this looks like another aspect now of the digital strategy,
That's
right?
right.
Because once I send it to your website, that's whoever's making the website, as long as because if they don't make the website correctly, somebody won't buy, even though I did a good job of getting them to the website, right? And you're going to blame me because you didn't set up the website correctly, or, it doesn't retarget them so that when they go to your website and leave, now it sends them a paid ad, right? So you have to ask companies what they're doing for the rest of the funnel to lead to conversion, so that, or set up a proper landing page that has all the information, right, that people need to make a decision. So that, yes, when you do start to convert, people will actually, or excuse me, when you do start to get them from social to website, they convert more. and it's not all on you. So again, really making sure that the goals that they have you set, and the metrics that they have you're holding you to are ones that are actually your responsibility and directly related to your work.
That's awesome. I mean, this is freaking amazing advice. To all my corporate friends out there that listen to this podcast, great advice here from Nadir Pearson, digital strategist, Pangea.app. It's a perfect way. I mean, everybody learns on this one. I think the traditional way of marketing, the mentality in some of the larger corporate America and getting that fresh thought of ideas from the younger generation is critical. I think if my executive friends out there that do follow this podcast can just take a phenomenal listen to this one, I mean, they're going to get valuable advice from you, Nadir. It's amazing because you're dead on. So listen,
I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
I've made a lot of mistakes,
we all do, man, but that's how we learn. That's how we learn.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you're 24 years old. You've made some mistakes. I'm 54. You can imagine the list. I have buckets in my garage of just mistakes, but you know what? We figured it out and we're here today, right? To talk about them.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so
sir.
Listen up, man. Thank you so much, Nadir. As we wrap up this episode, if I were to ask you, what's that one bit of advice to our listeners out there at T20E World, what would that one advice from Nadir Pearson be?
Again, I want to bring it back to the free for now, not forever. If you want to go fast, that's the fastest way to do it, is to like offer yourself free services, even for a period of time. I think, for me, people look at like in the cannabis industry, from a 19-year-old to now being 24,
yeah,
and the things that I've done. And a lot of it is because I had the privilege, yes, to do certain things for free and not be make or break on my life, and that does come from a level of privilege.
Sure.
But as much as you can, and let people know that, hey, maybe I'll do this for free now because I really want to take this opportunity and I really want to show you what I can do. But later on, let's talk about what this can be and have a real honest, and you hold people to that. I think that's really the fastest way to get you going, get you in the door, get you the opportunity that you seek. And like I said, again, it's an opportunity for you to show your stuff. You want to give people a risk, like low risk, high reward.
Absolutely.
If I think I'm doing it for free, it's low risk on your end. If I mess up, you didn't pay for it.
That's right.
Stop it.
Nadir, phenomenal advice to all our listeners out there. So once again, Nadir Pearson, thank you so much for being with us today to share social media careers in 2021. Nadir, thanks again. And to all our listeners out there, this is Nadir Pearson and Hugo, and we are checking out.